here with Rise United. Welcome, first and foremost. But second of all, Rise United is an organization co-founded by veteran Democratic strategist Yolanda Caraway. She has 40 years in being the strategist and doing this amazing work. And we wanted to make sure that tonight we had the opportunity to give you an amazing debate, a debate tonight that will host the Democratic National Committee chairs, party chairs, and its mission for Rise United, the mission is to empower the content creator generation to solidify their political identity. The platform was created to engage young, urban, and voters of color in democratic politics through the influencers and networks that shape their political identities. But honestly, I could not do tonight by myself. Tonight, we have the amazing, the incomparable, and consummate professional joining with me and co-moderating this debate. Please make sure that you give everybody in the chat, put in the comment section, a warm welcome to the CEO of Watering Hole Media, Ashley Allison. Ashley, how you doing?
I'm a professional. I'm
The
good. I'm
consummate
good.
professional.
Gotta keep it cool. Gotta keep it classy. I'm doing great. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing well. Now, tonight we have a great days of candidates. We definitely want to make sure that we're talking to them. I know that you're going to set us up for this conversation. So set us up. Let us know what we should be expecting.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Rise United, for asking me to do this. And thank you, candidates, for being here. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rise United DNC Forum featuring our candidates to lead the Democratic National Committee into the future. Tonight, we have the opportunity to hear directly from dedicated leaders in our party who want to help us chart a new path. In attendance tonight, we have Jason Paul, Ken Martin, Marianne Williamson, Martin O'Malley, and Nate Snyder. A special thanks to our incredible partners, the Collective PAC, Color of Change PAC, and Power Rise Action Fund, for their collaboration and ongoing commitment to elevating diverse voices in this process. We'd also like to thank everyone for joining in on Zoom and on our YouTube channels and Instagram and all the platforms. Your engagement and commitment and participation are crucial to shaping the future of the Democratic Party. So this debate, why the debate? Well, this forum is going to serve as an essential platform for our candidates to share their vision for the Democratic National Committee and the future of our party. As Democrats, we are united by our commitment to, let me say this again, we are united by our commitment to equity, to progress, and most importantly, inclusion. However, the path forward requires bold leadership, innovative ideas, and the dedication to engaging with communities at every single level. Tonight, we'll explore how these candidates plan to strengthen our party's infrastructure, mobilize voters, champion underrepresented voices, and most importantly, ensure Democrats are equipped to tackle the most pressing challenges of our time. This conversation isn't just about the direction of the Democratic Party. It's about ensuring that we lead with our values and that our values resonate and represent all Americans. So let's dive in here and hear from each candidate about their plan and their vision, to how they're going to bring their vision to reality to make our party stronger and chart a path forward. Brian, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, now the rules are pretty simple, right? We're going to have each candidate have 1 minute to respond to questions, and we have a timer. So we want to make sure that we're keeping everybody honest with the time. And I know that we want to get out here by 9 p.m. The moderators get to ask a follow-up question, and you will have 30 seconds per follow-up. We will make sure to allot that time as we go. Audience questions will be read during a dedicated segment. We have content creators that have submitted some questions and want to hear from the candidates directly. The time will be strictly enforced. Just want to make sure I say that. And then the closing statements tonight will be each 1 minute long. So we will make sure that everybody has equal time. Now, let's start this debate. The first segment is the path forward. We really wanted these candidates and all of you candidates to make sure we're talking about the vision for the Democratic Party moving forward as it relates to the platform, as it relates to lessons learned after the election loss in November. The first question to you, Martin O'Malley. As the Democratic Party reflects on the results of this election, how should the party approach fundamental changes and revisions to our current party platform?
As we reflect on what happened and where we failed, and it wasn't because of our platform, It wasn't because of our policies, I don't believe. I believe it's because a lot of the hardest working people throughout our country felt like we weren't speaking to their economic pain and their economic concerns. So I've been proud to be able to contribute many great things to the Democratic Party's platform through my own leadership and advocacy, whether it was the, 100% renewable energy by 2050, or for a time, we actually had repealing the death penalty in the platform. But the changes we need to make in the party are really about execution. Our policies are good, our ideas are good, but our online communications leave a lot to be desired. And we've hurt ourselves on that score because we've done a piss poor job of lifting up the next generation who actually knows how to communicate. The content creators, the influencers. We were trying to get there towards the end, but the end is too late. We got to be there every day, every day.
Thank you. Ashley?
Great. The next question is about voter apathy, and this is for you, Nate. Nearly 90 million people didn't vote in 2024. One argument that has emerged from this block of non-voters is that Democrats and the Republican Party are nearly identical. So their vote is really inconsequential. That's how they feel. How do you respond to voter apathy and the call for the end of a two-party system?
Well, I think this starts back to similar to the question that was just asked before. We need to treat the Black community, Latino community, LGBTQ plus, women, etc., as the backbone of our party and not as a means to an end, as we have done repeatedly, I believe, in elections. We also need to make sure it's not transactional and we just don't go to them during every 2 to 4 year presidential cycles. I think that right there, reestablishing that trust is paramount. And then also we need to be really true in looking at our records in regards to supporting working families. It's too long we've gone ahead and supported policies as Democrats or not supported policies like the Employee Free Choice Act or bailing out banks or bailing out other corporations. And that's taking a toll, not just over just the past election, but over the past 20 years or so. So I think we need to look inward. I think we need to have the hard conversations. And I think we need to go back to our roots. I think the governor is right. It's in our platform, but we need to start showing up. We need to start being authentic. We need to start listening better. And I hope we get into it, talking about the new age of tech and digital and things like that. We also need to elevate youth and cede some leadership spots to them so they're in the driver's seat so we can evolve.
Thank you so much. Next question goes to Dr. Quintessa Hathaway. A pathway forward cannot really be defined without a party identity being defined. And a lot of questions are circulating around the Democratic Party's definition of their identity. In your view, what exactly is the fundamental identity of the Democratic Party, and how would you message on that identity?
Ryan, I'm not sure we have Dr. Hathaway right now.
Okay, so let's just move the question to Marianne Williamson.
This shouldn't just be about the identity of the Democratic Party. It should be the identity of the United States of America and American culture. There should not be just a separation between politics and culture the way there is today. In European capitals, if you look at Berlin or Paris or London, the people in politics have dinner with the philosophers and the storytellers and the artists. Here we have Washington over here. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party is part of that. It's all about us, a political class. Americans don't like that. They don't like Washington think. They don't even like it. And the Democratic Party needs to break out of that. What we should be is part of the zeitgeist of what's going on in this culture. And so the identity of the Democratic Party should be a container for what's going on in the culture. And we have failed in ways that the culture has not failed. The American people are not the problem. The American people are ready to go and create something new. It is the political system, including the Democratic Party at sometimes, that has suppressed the more creative voices of the culture, leaving room for Donald Trump.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to our next question, and we're going to talk about winning things, which we like to do as people who are in politics. This question is for Ken Martin. So the Republican Party does not hesitate to own and loudly celebrate their wins, as made honestly by the recent TikTok ban and the reversal. So, do you agree historically that Democrats have struggled to communicate and take credit for their policy and societal wins, which can hurt them during election years? And if you agree, how can the party improve in their messaging?
Yeah, thank you. And that's a great message. First question. First, let me just say thank you to Yolanda, of course, to Brian and Ashley for moderating this. Let me talk to you what it's not about. It's not about our message or the policy prescriptions that we support. Think about Missouri as an example. They passed a minimum wage increase. They passed paid family leave. They passed abortion protections, all by wide margins. Yet those same voters went down the ballot and voted for Donald Trump and the Republicans. So our policies that we champion are very popular with Americans throughout this country. Those issues are passing in ballot initiatives and referenda in wide majorities throughout this country. It's the fact that people aren't connecting those policies that they know will improve their lives back to our candidates and to our party and to people, our elected officials. We have to do a better job of making sure folks know who we're fighting for, what we're fighting for, and why. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have. We have not given people a sense of who we are fighting for as a party and connecting those popular policies back to their lives.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next question is for Jason Paul. Jason, in a recent Rise United poll of voters under 40, 60% strongly agreed that our political system only responds to those with money and power. Younger voters are becoming increasingly disillusioned with the political system. What is your plan to engage and mobilize Gen Z and millennial voters?
It's impossible to blame them. I'd like to blame them, but it's impossible to blame them because the number one thing that the Democratic Party asks of people is for money. That's the number one thing that we do. We need it for this, we need it for that. It is a constant barrage of asking people for money. That's not inclusive. When you go to Democratic Party meetings, which I've been going to as a young person for 20 years or so, it is very clearly the case that it's sort of this is the way we do things. This is the way we've always done things. And we're going to keep doing things these ways, whether it works for young people or doesn't work for young people. Young people have to adapt to us. We don't have to adapt to young people. I mean, just think, in this campaign, I've laid out plans for colleges and high schools that sort of span the breadth of what we do. For a lot of Democratic Party on colleges, we focus on them on our timetable. We need you in September of the election year. That's when we're going to start talking to you. That's when you can vote. It's way too late then. So it's not surprising that when we don't talk on their timeline and their ways, they're not going to appreciate us. I'm not surprised.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, we're going to go to our next set of questions, but I did just want to acknowledge that we have a couple candidates that we're having a little technical difficulty with. And when they are able to get on, we'll make sure to give them the same amount of time and come back to questions. But I just wanted to acknowledge that. Okay, folks, this is not going to be a term that you haven't heard probably ad nauseum at this point. And what it means is really important to me. So we're going to talk about the working class. As someone who is from Youngstown, Ohio, a still town who has seen job after job leave, plant after plant close, which means families are struggling regardless of what they look like in my hometown. It's an issue that we really need to focus on. So the first question is going to go to Nate Snyder. Let's talk about unions. For decades, the Democratic Party has won the support of union workers in this country, not just the endorsements, but the actual workers in the unions. What do you think of the recent statement by Liz Schuler, the president of the AFL-CIO, that the DNC new leadership must have extensively worked with or even be a part of a labor union at some point in their past?
I think that is absolutely a requirement. I agree with President Schuler. Look, I was a SEIU organizer in upstate New York. I also worked for SEIU International as national coordinator, and I was a card-carrying union member for our staff union, OPEIU Local 2. This is one of the troubling things that we saw this cycle. We saw massive vote share losses in communities to where there were healthy unions, healthy democratic infrastructure. I think this goes back to accountability and showing up. And an example I want to really pull the string on real quickly while I have time is what we're seeing in Michigan right now. Look, they have the trifecta. They have the governor's races. They have both houses. And in the waiting moments, UAW is trying to push pro-worker legislation. And yet Democrats who say they fight for working people and working families are not showing up. And the level of dysfunction has actually meant that they lost votes on the table. And so working families look at that and they say, look, if you're going to say you vote for me, you got to show up. So we need to do a better job on that front.
Okay, because we have some extra time, I'm going to actually ask you a follow-up question to that. So what do you do as the head, if you're elected chair of the DNC, what would be one thing you do to get those Dems to show up?
I would be the first one to pick up the phone and call them. Also, I'd make sure there were incentives, whether it's funding that they're getting from the DNC or otherwise, that it's just not a free meal ticket. Like, look, there's certain things that are really important to the heart of our party and our values. Working families is at the core. So if you're not showing up, there are going to be consequences. There's going to be a level of accountability. Further, I'm also going to make sure that this just isn't just a labor caucus issue, that we're enabling and organizing all the different affiliates, all the various caucuses. This is a party issue and a community issue, not just a particular community issue.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I see we have Ben Winkler with us. Thank you so much. The question for you, and by the way, just wanted to make sure we level set. Everyone will get 1 minute to answer their question. The timer has been going. And then you will, if there is a follow-up question, you will have 30 seconds to respond. Just want to make sure that all the candidates have that at their knowledge. Ben, the question for you is, critics argue that the Democrat Party's leadership has been dominated by elites, disconnected from working class struggles. Now, Representative Jordan Harris from Pennsylvania's 186th district famously said on Simone Sanders' MSNBC, "Our party has always been for the working class, but sometimes our party is a little bit too much Starbucks and not enough Dunkin' Donuts." What specifically would you do to ensure voters that you recognize this perception, but that Democrats are still the party of the working class? Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thanks, everyone. And sorry to hit technical snags. If we want to be the party for the working class, that means we have to fight for working people. And that's across race and ethnicity. That's in rural areas and cities and suburbs. The fights that we choose, where we throw down, where we are willing to piss people off because we don't agree with them, because we are taking a stand and choosing a side, that defines who we are. And in this moment, there's a lot of companies that are about to make a huge amount of money and a lot of super wealthy people that will make a huge amount of money from Trump's policies. And as Democrats, we shouldn't be making a deal if it's at the expense of working people. Now, this affects how we message, how we talk, where we show up. It affects the kind of candidates that we recruit and support. And we should be working with unions and then working to encourage working class people to run for office because they do better in elections, because this is a majority working class country. Across race and ethnicity, across this nation, most people work for a living. Republicans and Democrats can fall into this trap of thinking that we should find self-funders. We should find people that folks want to support, and that's how we're going to win.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. O'Malley, education. I'm a former teacher, so this rings.
All right.
Okay. So for a long time, Democratic strategist Doug Sosnick stated that the education level now is the biggest single best predictor of how someone's going to vote in American politics. While Democrats have overwhelmingly won the votes of college-educated Americans, that group only makes up roughly a third of the population. Hillary, Secretary Clinton, won voters of color without college degrees by 56 points in 2016. But Trump narrowed that gap by 30 points this past election in 2024. Is this shift something that gives you cause or concern? And if it does, what should be the Democratic Party's response?
Yeah, well, everything about this last election gives me cause and concern. That's why I'm running for chair of the DNC. When I was governor of Maryland, we made our public schools #1 in America 5 years in a row. No state's ever done that before. No state's done that since. But at the same time, we also pushed a program called uh, 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 it was about the truth of that a 2 year degree or even less is sufficient for you to get a great job. We pushed, and in fact, President Obama came to help us push CTE, career and technical education throughout our state. I think we have to break ourselves out of, and this is all Americans really, out of the mindset that it's all about the 4 year degree. It's really about being able to provide for yourself, your family, get a great job as quickly as you want it. I'm out of time.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about the dignity of work and equipping people with the tools they need to do what they want to do as quickly as possible, not a 4 year degree.
Thank you.
Thank you
I was
so
going to
much.
ask you a follow-up question, but since you went over, I won't.
It was called Skills to Succeed.
Thank you.
With a two.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Now, I think we have Dr. Quintessa Hathaway with us. Now we
Yes.
have, all right. So I just want to level set again, make sure that everyone knows, all the candidates have all the information. Everyone will have 1 minute to answer the question, and you will have 30 seconds for a follow-up if there is a follow-up question. So Dr. Hathaway, thank you so much for joining us. My question to you is we're in the segment of the working class. Right now, there's a national debate about the definition of working class, particularly concerning the historical exclusion of Black, Latino, Asian, and other non-white communities. I think historically speaking, whenever people talk about the working class, they just think about white people in the Rust Belt states of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. What and how will you redefine and center a more inclusive vision of the working class within the party when right now there's a lot of critics that say otherwise?
Historically, first let me back up. Thank you all for hosting today's forum. Let me use my good manners. And all those that are viewing today, thank you all for taking some time out of your busy day to be present with us in this very moment. Historically, there has always been an underclass in America, low wage class in this country. Also, there's an entire body of people historically that worked in this country for free, forced labor in this country. People of African descent, indigenous descent, the native population, and even poor whites in this country, when we tell the whole scope of history, were enslaved in the United States of America as well. Case in point, I say that because when we look at the working class, there's always been a working class. There's always been a margin of the population that have been undercompensated. And we have to begin to look at that not just based upon income bracket.
I can give you an additional 15 seconds because I know that you came in a little late to finish, so you can round out that statement. So
all right. Working class is not limited to race. It's not limited to ethnicity, nationality, but oftentimes, as you stated, it does look as if, and the way it's projected upon us, that it is simply white people that we're talking about. But there have been Black working class, so we ought to open up that definition to be more inclusive of all races. It's even in our talking points as a party and as the DNC.
thank you so much, Ashley.
Okay, Jason Paul. Since Nixon's Southern strategy, the Republican Party has mastered the ability to use fear and division to manipulate voters and rule America. How can the Democratic Party combat Republicans' dominance and rule America and activate these voters who historically have felt abandoned by Democrats?
I think the only way we can do that is by showing up. And when I say showing up, I don't mean necessarily candidates, and I don't mean sort of, every once in a while. I mean, we need to be there on the ground in every county all the time. And the way we do that is having a full-time paid organizer on the ground for every county in America, and then another one for every 50,000 of population. Where it is the case where it's not popular to be a Democrat, where we lose 3-1, 2-1, people stop speaking up for you. And if nobody speaks up for you, then nobody wants to continue to speak up with you, and you're just going to keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. I'm a Democrat, and I'm here is the only way we can fix the situation in rural America, really in anywhere where we're getting crushed. We have to just be there all the time. That's the only way. It's expensive, but there's no other way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question goes to Marianne Williamson. So some argue that the Democrat Party has leaned too heavily on cultural and social issues at the expense of addressing income inequality and economic inequality. How should we balance the inclusion while also the progression of the kitchen table economics that we so desperately understand that the voters want to talk about?
I'm not just worried about kitchen table issues. I'm worried about the Americans who can't even afford a kitchen table. I know some of my colleagues here tonight have said, we don't have a problem with policies. I totally disagree with that. On a federal level, we damn do. We are the only advanced nation that does not have universal health care. We had tuition-free college and tech school until the 60s and 70s. We have not supported the PRO Act and driven it through. We have $7.25 an hour is still the federal minimum wage. So the people who you mentioned at the beginning of this call who are thinking we're too controlled by the same corporations Republicans are controlled by, in too many instances, it's true. We have to face this. It's not just a messaging problem. People can smell it. People can feel it in their lives and in their pocketbooks. So when we show up for people by fighting for these things, by standing for these things federally as well, and naming the corporate tyranny that is now holding the American people hostage. The only reason we don't have universal health care is because we're hostage to insurance companies. The only reason Biden gave more oil drilling permits even than Trump did because of big oil and so forth. Why don't we become who we say we are, and we're not going to have all these problems?
May I ask you a follow-up to that?
Yes, please.
So what do you do as DNC chair to execute one of those things? How do you put all of that into action?
Well, it's a balance because I'm not the policymaker. The chair of the DNC is not a policymaker. That's Schumer, that's Hakeem Jeffries, and so forth. But the chair can certainly weigh in because we can weigh in on policy within the context of what our values are. So the chair can absolutely weigh in, not make policy, but can weigh in on these things. Because if our job, which is the job of all of us here, is to save the Democratic Party, we have got to get out of this perch where we too often come across like we want to help the working people of the United States, but it's so obvious to everybody that we won't go so far as to cross the line beyond which we offend our corporate donors. That day has to stop. And whoever the chair is, I think needs to name it.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is for Kim Martin around economic justice. The rise of income inequality continues to be a major issue. It seems to be one of the most pressing issues of this past election. How will the Democratic Party's position itself as the champion of economic justice for all? And how will you address skepticism that the party serves corporate interests?
Well, first off, I mean, I think we have to call it out. I mean, we just saw yesterday an oligarchy in this country with three of the richest men in the world sitting behind Donald Trump when he's sworn in. It's very clear what's happening in this country right now, right? The rich, the powerful, the billionaires, the corporations are now going to, they've put Donald Trump in, they put this tyrant into office so they can profit off the backs of hardworking Americans, right? We need to call this up and fight back against this oligarchy, against the billionaires, the rich corporate class in this country that have been screwing over working people for too long. And the reality is there's not one of us on this call, one of us running for this position that would disagree with that. The job of the Democratic Party is to give people who are fighting to achieve the American dream, just to build a better life for their families and achieve some level of economic success, a sense that they can achieve that without the rich and the powerful putting their thumb on the scale to screw them over.
Thank you so much for that. Ben, we wanted to go to you to ask you a question as well. This one is about messaging. There are a lot of great sound bites that Democrats need to punch back and punch back hard, right? And many voters really agree with that. But the question is really the how. What are the specific steps you would take to ensure that your messaging was heard by the whole country? Is it that we need to use the bully pulpit more? Is it that we need more press conferences? Is it that we need more photo ops? Is it better to use media, right? Earned media? Is it better to use content creators, considering that content creators are not, you know, innocent bystanders in this process? We're part and parcel to the pathway forward. So what say you about punching back and punching back hard, and how is it specifically something that you can effectuate on?
Thanks so much, Brian. The answer is all the above, but I want to underline the content creators part. So many people in this country do not pay attention to newspapers. They don't watch cable TV. They don't listen to national public radio, where Democrats often go to communicate with people who might be donors, but don't represent the majority of voters, especially for younger folks. They spend time with influencers. They spend time with streamers. They spend time with YouTubers. They spend time with long form podcasts. They spend time with vertical video. And if we're not in all those places, and by in, I mean working with people who actually have the trust of audiences in all of those places, then we're just going to miss a huge share of the population of this country. And that means that the national party needs to constantly be refreshing an analysis of where audiences actually go. It means actually building relationships on a long-term basis with content creators on all the different media where young people and people of all ages are spending their time and attention. And it means that when there's a political emergency, we're briefing everyone so they have the equipment to go out in their own language to their own audiences to communicate what is happening in this country.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This will be our last question of round 1 and 2. We went back to Ben and Dr. Hathaway because we had some technical difficulties. And so this question is for you, Dr. Hathaway. So a pathway forward cannot be defined without a party identifying being, a pathway forward cannot be defined without a party identity being defined. In your view, what exactly is the fundamental identity of the Democratic Party, and how would you message that identity?
The Democratic Party is an urban party right now. We are a coastal party right now. We must expand the tent, the reach of the party when it comes to growing the most loyal base, the largest voting bloc within the party, which is the African American vote. I know some of my fellow friends on this probably tired of me saying this, but truth is truth. And when we bring more Hispanics and Asians and Native Americans and all people into our tent and convince them that our value system is the best way for us to march forward as a party, to expand the citizenship education in the urban vote and support those that are actually voting for us as a party, we will do a much better job. Secondly, we're planning on reaching out to the rural areas. Know that the Republicans are
Give
going
you 5 more seconds, but time is up.
Know that the Republicans are going to come into the urban areas and court our voters. And that is going to require a broad, expansive message going forward for us to reclaim, in the words of our president, outgoing president, to reclaim the soul of the nation.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you so much. All right. Well, that concludes the first and second segment. We are going to move to our third segment, which is our content creator submitted questions. The first question goes to both Marianne Williamson and Jason Paul. We will give you the equitable time to speak. So the first thing is, what is your plan to battle disinformation and misinformation in an era where both are running rapid on social media platforms? Okay, and by the way, this question is submitted by Melinda Hale at Melinda Hale on the platforms, all the platforms. So let me ask you once again, what is your plan to battle disinformation and misinformation in an era where both are running rapid on social media platforms? First minute goes to Marianne Williamson.
The reason so many Americans are vulnerable to lies is because we haven't spoken enough truth. The only thing that can beat big lies is big truths, but we speak little truths. You raise your hand in a court of law and you speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth is that this country is now dominated by a matrix of corporate powers that holds Washington hostage and that has turned our government into a system of legalized bribery. People know this is true, they can feel it, but we're kind of like an alcoholic family system where the kids know, I don't think mommy or daddy is telling the real truth. You create a hole, where you stop standing in the light and the darkness just comes in. So the problem is, first of all, also, and we have to teach kids American history. We have too many states that don't even teach children civics, American history, or American government. How can we be surprised that people are so vulnerable to all these lies when we didn't tell them what the Bill of Rights was to begin with? We have to tell more truth. Kids have to learn about America. They have to learn about the Bill of Rights. They have to learn what's true about this country from the time they're very young, and then they simply will not be so vulnerable to all these lies and illusions and misinformation that the neo-fascists are bringing forth.
Thank you so much. Jason Paul, the same question to you. What is your plan to battle disinformation and misinformation in an era where both are running rapid on social media?
So I think we have to start with people talking to people. I think that is one of the hardest things to do, because we're so inclined to accept that the battle is on the phones. But I think if the battle is on the phones, a party that is dedicated to community and truth is really disadvantaged, no matter how much we want to be advantaged. We have to fight there, but it's a very hard place for us to win. We have to build things that take people out of that and back into community with each other. The other thing I would say is that a lot of the sort of damage of misinformation and disinformation comes really from what people want to believe. And we have to really think about what they want to believe and not just what they are believing. So, when people wanted to believe Barack Obama wasn't born here because it made them feel better about him winning, because that would matter. People want to believe Q so that they could justify Donald Trump. I think that's one of the major problems.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is going to go to Ken Martin, Ben Wickler, and Dr. Hathaway. And this question comes from Eve, and she is at Gemma_talks on all the platforms, as Brian says. So what are the top 3 most important new things the DNC must achieve strategically to win the White House over in the next 4 years? We'll start with you, Ken.
Thank you. Well, first, we need a permanent campaign. That means that we don't go down with our organizing or our communications infrastructure. The reality is where we lost this election is we've gotten away from basics. Both Ben and I run permanent campaigns in our states where we're talking to people all the time, where we have organizers out there communicating constantly. You see, we can't just show up 4 months before an election and have a transactional relationship with voters, where the first thing we're asking them to do is to do something for our party and candidates, which is to vote for us. We have to build durable trust with communities, and that starts with making sure we're present more than just the last 4 months of the election. And that's true of our communications infrastructure. Where the Republicans beat us to the punch is that they were defining us in all of these information spaces that we weren't even on. For 3 years, we cannot start our communications infrastructure in an election year or our organizing infrastructure in an election year. We have to run a permanent campaign, and we have to meet voters where they're at. That means being present on the ground and in those information spaces.
Thank you. Ben, again, the question is the top 3 most important things the DNC must achieve strategically to win the White House back in 4 years.
Well, I agree. I'll start with, I agree with Ken. Building a permanent campaign, organizing year-round on the ground, and I'll add with that, expanding the map, because the old battleground states are not going to be enough if those are their only options as we look towards 2028. And that means working to build power to unrig states, to defeat voter suppression in state after state, to win governorships and trifectas in 26, 25, 27, to gear up for 28. The second thing is, in fighting in every information space, we need to build trust that Democrats are on the side of working people across race and ethnicity across our country, and degrade trust from the other side by showing people the truth about whose side Republicans are on. Every single time, they betray working families, the people who vote for them, those who don't vote, those who vote for Democrats, in order to rip people off. And the third thing I'd say is that we're in the midst of a revolution in how technology works, an AI revolution that is changing the way people organize and communicate. And we need to be on the front edge of that, respecting workers and the voices of the people we work with, but understanding that things are going to change in these next 4 years, and we need to be there first.
Thank you. And again, the question is, what are the top 3 most important things the DNC must achieve to win the White House back in 4 years. Dr. Hathaway, we'll let you close out this question.
We must address a racial partisan gerrymandering that's happening all across this country, more specifically in communities of color. Passage of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act funnels up the power, draws out the vote of the people necessary for us to win back the White House. Secondly, we must fully empower and engulf the youth in this country to build upon their political voting bloc potential. When we get the youth out, they have the potential to shift the entire narrative, shift the entire power base in this country. And then also we are going to have to increase the number of voter registers by at least 10 million new registered voters in this country in order to bring more people into our powerful tent as a Democratic Party. That is how we will go about the business of winning back the White House come 2028.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you so much. Yes. This final question will go to Martin O'Malley and Nate Snyder. First question is, if you become chair of the DNC, how will the DNC collaborate with content creators to craft these messages that inform and motivate underrepresented communities? Right. So let me say that again. If you become chair of the DNC, how will the DNC collaborate with content creators to craft messages that inform and motivate underrepresented communities? Martin O'Malley.
Within the first 100 days, we are going to stand up an information war room. In other words, a center of excellence for digital communications. We are going to quickly snap the DNC's rapid response and proactive offensive communications into a cadence of every 2 weeks, like agile software development, not like your grandmother's DNC. It's going to be every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. It's going to be collaborative. We're going to create regional headquarters across the country, and we're going to use the power of the internet to actually collaborate, test messages, see the phrases at work, measure the number of impressions that that the content creators and influencers are receiving, and we're going to create a winnable game. It's going to be visible, and it's going to be something that we invite people to participate in, not something that we just tell them from the top down to do.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder.
Similarly, I would work to put together an analytics center, partner with organizations like the Center for Internet Security to provide real-time information, having to deal with mis and disinformation, various other things such as trends with the community directly, along with all of our allies. But I think it really boils down to this, is creating a true partnership with content creators, treating them like the professionals they are, garnering those relationships, and also asking them to lead and giving them a seat at the table as they see the landscape. Further, what I would do is I would promote youth leadership within the DNC. I think we're missing a huge opportunity here. Youth tends to be native users of this environment we're talking about. They know it like the back of their hand, putting them in decision-making roles, but also allowing them the free mobility and decision-making power to build these alliances, to build sort of the force multiplying community here, and then also treating people as professionals.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's great to hear, considering, you know, legacy media had some problems with content creators being at the DNC this past year, but we're glad that you all are kind of on the same page in that regard. This is now the end. We're approaching the end. We have an opportunity for the candidates to give their closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute, and we will start with Dr. Hathaway.
We can do some awesome work together under the tenets of the DNC as well as the Democratic Party. It's time for a new path to be charted forward that is creative, innovative, that expands the power of minorities and women and those of the LGBTQIP+ community, and grow in this digital space and do a better job of messaging as a party. Under new leadership, all of those things will come to the fold. I believe in this thing called America, that we have infinite possibilities when we work together, when we collaborate, when we believe in the spirit of what it means to be a citizen of this country. We hear over and over again about this 57 state territory strategy, but we also need to build upon our base, the most loyal constituency of the Democratic Party, educate our way, litigate our way, and be about the business of social justice and actionability for all people.
Thank you so much. Ken Martin, your closing statements.
Well, here's my message for Democrats and on behalf of Democrats. We can't be weak because so many people in this country are counting on us now that Donald Trump is in power again. We know he's going to use his office to seek revenge against his perceived political enemies. But we also know he isn't going to do anything to actually help the people he made promises to. So we have to fight back. We have to make our case to voters about why Democrats are the party that is working for them. Look, Donald Trump has already moved to free insurrectionists and far-right militants from the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. He's already working to raise the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. He's already trying to betray the Constitution and rip apart rights for kids born in this country. And he's propped up a new oligarchy, a modern-day band of robber barons to pilfer the country. Our party is at an inflection point. We have a lot to figure out, but we can't sit on our hands and wait. That's why we need strong leadership at the DNC with a proven winner, because losing by less does not allow us to make a tangible difference in people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, Martin O'Malley.
If you've hung in through this debate, it's because you love your country. It's because you understand that so many of the things we perhaps took for granted about our country, all of the qualities that make us a republic, have been undermined. They're going to be attacked. In just the first day of the Trump administration, you've already seen that. Whether we have a republic on the other side of this or not is going to depend on how quickly we can pick ourselves up off the mat, tap into the great potential that we bring to this table of democracy, this platform, this pro-democracy platform called the Democratic Party, and speak to the American people in plain language, meet them where they're at, and bring the forces of hope, the forces of decency, the forces of dignity to bear in the public square. But that public square no longer exists in simply the Sunday shows or on the cable programs. It's on the internet. It's on communities online. And we need your help. Thank you for what you're doing for our country. I'd like to earn your support to be your chair to lead us out of this darkness.
Thank you so much. Jason Paul.
So I want everyone to be a Democrat. And I think we need to ask ourselves, what are the barriers that keep people from being Democrats, and how can we knock them down? I also think that we need to engage, and again, on a people-to-people basis, because that's the only way that we can overcome this. People talk about sort of, that is also content creators. I think that when we have content creators, what we want to do is I want to give you an actual seat at the table. We have an affiliate program where organizations can become affiliates of the DNC. There should be one for content creators so that you guys have an actual seat at the table. And really, as sort of someone who is a young person who's been in this for 20 years and still young, I think it's important that we embrace the idea that we have to change, but we have to do the things that will make it fun and exciting for everyone to want to be a part of this party. That's why I'm running.
Thank you so much. Nate Snyder.
Thank you for this conversation. Really enjoyed being here. Look, I've served the Democratic Party in some fashion or form for the past 25 years, whether through campaigns, joining the labor movement, but most recently serving as a national security official at DHS, both under the Obama and Biden administrations. I've taken on the extremism we're talking about. I've taken on white supremacism. We didn't talk about that, but that is definitely prevalent as well. And I know the mis and disinformation space. So not only do I want to win campaigns, and that is how we win back, but I also want to take on and dismantle this propaganda machine that we're now facing, evolve our relationships and how we imagine organizing, how we look at the landscape and how we can adapt to it, not just now, but in the future and long term, so we don't let this happen again. Look, I also want to unleash the various other things, whether it's litigation, new grassroots tactics, and various other fronts to make sure that communities feel safe, but also we're fighting on all fronts, because it's going to be all hands on deck these next 4 years.
Thank you so much. Ben Winkler.
Thank you. Thank you, Rise United, for bringing us together tonight. We're in a moment of crisis in this country, and we've seen crises before. This is not normal, but what's normal isn't okay either. And we need to change, and we need a DNC that's ready to change, and we need a DNC chair who has fought and built change in the trenches, organizing, building movements with new media in a state like Wisconsin, where Republicans rigged things for total control. In Wisconsin, we've worked with Black influencers and Black creators. We've worked with cultural partners. We've worked with folks who are communicating in ways that the Democratic Party doesn't traditionally do on a year-round basis. And we've seen the results. In this last election in 2024, Kamala Harris got more votes than Joe Biden got in 2020. And that's not true for any of our neighboring states. We were able to flip 14 state legislative seats and send Tammy Baldwin back to the Senate, despite a wall of Republican money attacking her with the most vicious ads we've ever seen. We know how to fight. We know how to win. It's now or never.
Thank you. And Marianne Williamson, closing statements.
The facts are on our side. That's not the problem. Ken articulated them, I thought, beautifully this evening. The problem is that the part of the brain that decides who to vote for is different than the part of the brain that rationally analyzes an issue. So all of the technical stuff, the administrative stuff, all of that, the 24/7 campaign, all of those things, there's so much talent represented on this call. We will get this done. The problem is that we're not dealing with an ordinary politician or political phenomenon. And Donald Trump has introduced an era of political theater, and we won't be going back. So we ourselves we have to become as phenomenal as Donald Trump is. We have to meet him on the level of that adrenaline rush. We have to meet him on the level of the story he's telling. It's a lie, the story he's telling, but we have to tell a story too. So I don't look at content creators like, come help us. This idea of a separate political class has got to end. It's more like what we can do together. I read an interview with a Fortune 500 CEO not too long ago. He said 20 years ago, we were looking for digital people. Today, we're looking for storytellers. And that's what the DNC needs to look for. We're not going to have a focus group to see if your phrases work. You know what phrases work. You're the artist. And actually, it's not just that we need you. The country needs you. We need to work together.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to all of our candidates for their closing statements, for being with us tonight, for giving us the transparency that we hoped that this forum and debate would do, right? We know that there are specific people that vote for the DNC party chair, but it's important, right, Ashley?
Yes, absolutely. I know I don't look at, but I have worked. I'm old enough to have worked in government, nonprofit, direct service, and now in media. And this is the first DNC chair event I've ever participated in my 25 years of political organizing and activism, because I'm not losing this country to fascism. And I wish all of you the best of luck. And I ask all of you that regardless of what happens, that we all stay committed, because we all are going to need this to do this together. The people who are watching, the people who submitted questions, thank you for your commitment to this party, even in hard times, because despair is not the time to lose hope. It is the time to become more disciplined. So thank you so much. Thank you, Rise United.
Thank you for having us.
Candidates. And thank you, Brian, for holding it down with me. Let's do this again tomorrow. No, I'm joking.
Hey, let's run it back. Thank you so much again. Thank you so much again. I also want to give a quick shout out to, again, Yolanda Caraway, who could not be with us tonight, but probably is watching on the YouTube. She is the co-founder for Rise United, and also our executive director, Jason Jerens. He probably doesn't like to be in the spotlight, but I'm going to give him the props anyway. Thank you so much to our candidates. Again, this is an opportunity for us. I know this has been your upteenth, millionth maybe forum, right? And I know that you guys have been doing so much, but making sure that you're putting yourselves out there, encouraging you all to, again, no matter who wins, win, lose, or draw, that we're all committed into this process and that we work together in some form, shape, or fashion, because it's going to be very, very needed. And with that, thank you all to who are watching, who are with us here on the behind the scenes on the Zoom, and we will catch you all at another time.
Thank you, guys.
For coming to Rise United.
Great being with you. Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.